I'm a student at University of Michigan at the School of Art and Design, Stamps. And I joined BAM last year, or no, not last year, this year in January, and it has been something, but like, I mean, I'm not sure if I want to, like, I wrote something, it's really long, I don't know if I want to say it now or later, but I do want to say, like, I forgot what I want to say, that, like, I never feel like it has been for nothing, you know what I mean? And so, like, when the university administration, like, violently attacks you in, like, a public meeting, and when the university administration, you know, like, makes sure to arrest, you know, undocumented leader Jose Alvarenga, like, just to intimidate you, it always comes with an understanding that what we're doing is the right thing, and that what we're doing is the thing that is making it possible for students to speak up and to realize, you know, to bring a realization to the anger and to the unfulfilled feelings that they have, and understand where that comes from, which is from the racism, the isolation that comes from the racism, the sexism, the anti-immigrant bigotry, the anti-Muslim bigotry, the anti-LGBTQ bigotry on this campus. And it also helps them to understand what they can do about it. Because the power of students and youth is endless. And that's something that I think that we're constantly seeing. Like, even from people who aren't in BAM, you know, like with, like I constantly keep going back to, you know, the protest recently where, like, you know, students from the school of, like, it was a protest in solidarity with the University of Missouri that happened on Central Campus, where students from the School of Social Work who were fed up with that very racist treatment that you've been talking about publicly exposed professors who were not and GSIs who were not letting them speak in class about these things that have absolutely everything to do with the School of Social Work. Or like, okay, even if they didn't have to do with the School of Social Work, they have to do with your existence as a human being. And to ignore them is outright racist, but to ignore them on a campus where you're constantly ignored and diminished and exposed to violence because of that racism is absolutely unacceptable. And they came to that understanding. They always had that understanding, you know, students on this campus have always had that understanding, and they are coming to the realization that they are ready to fight. And I think that that's absolutely incredible, and I will be honest that, like, when I joined BAM, I didn't expect to see that so soon. And, like, I think something else that we have to keep in mind is that this is, like, going to be an ebb and flow. It is going to be something where we're going to be ahead, and then the university might go on an offense, and then we'll put them back on the defense. But this is something that, like, we could never have gotten to this point if we hadn't always been fighting for students and students' rights, for students who are presently students, for students who are prospective students like Markeith, and all the students in DSA, all the students in the Detroit schools, high school to elementary. Like, this is, I don't even know, like, what else to say. Like, this is a fight that is going to continue and going to get stronger, and that's, like, if that's not incredible, then nothing is, you know? And it's, you know, like, I want to mention this later on as well, but, you know, at Stamps, sometimes it is really, really hard to deal with the incredible hypocrisy of that school. Knowing, you know, when I go there, like, the students, okay, so technically I'm a freshman, so I'm in classes with freshmen, but, so many of the classes that they're required to take are ideological training for them to be the best that they can be for the university and for the university's goals. And when you go to the guest lecture series over at Michigan Theater, you know, like, you're told like what your ideology should be about race, where we have somebody who like comes and tells us, you know, she talks about how she, you know, like there was this, like, you know, there's this fable that, not even a fable, but like a story that when America, you know, still hadn't abolished slavery, like when slavery was still in place, that if you were a slave, you were less than dirt, you were scum, but if you had a skill, then you were, you know, you were still scum, you were still less than subhuman, but you were more worth something to a slave owner. And she said, in my work, I want to honor that legacy. Honor the legacy of being subhuman with a skill, with a craft, and you're telling this to freshmen who have not had any, like, if at all, who have not had, you know, that experience, like, being able to put that isolation that they feel into words, who are looking for, like, the right path into becoming strong and good and brave and resilient people, and you're going to tell them that that's a noble goal? Or, for example, another speaker who talked about, you know, when her first, like, sexual escapades, when she was a minor, where she goes and, like, finds a 33-year-old man to lose her virginity. And, like, I was noticing, you know, I'm sitting with, like, people I've been talking to in this school, and they're so uncomfortable, but they don't know what to do because everyone in there is clapping furiously and so excited to hear these horrific things because, you know, she said then, you know, that, you know, if you have the opportunity to lose your virginity, do it. And it's like, how are you going to tell this to friends? I couldn't handle it. I broke down, knowing, first of all, that they're telling this to freshmen. And then also, in the same breath, the same exact, you know, speakers are saying, oh, by the way, if you're looking for a place to live, go to Detroit. Make sure to go to Detroit. Rent is really cheap there, you know, right now. Rent is really cheap. You should go to Detroit. Artists are going to Detroit, and I know exactly what artists they're talking about when you go to, like, you know, the bougie parts of Detroit now, the gentrified parts of Detroit, and you see paintings of white women on the buildings. Like, who put them there? Who are those white women for, you know? And then, like, I'm sitting in these lectures, I'm sitting and I'm thinking about Marquis, who was not only attacked by 6 cops at the Regents meeting and arrested at 16, where the university knows that he is a high school student at the Detroit School of Arts, but later on, when he refuses to back down, when he continues to expound on his right as a human being and as a student to be able to go to the university that charters his school and is destroying his education, they kick him out of his dance team. They're trying to ruin his life, and then they're telling the art students that they already have to go to Detroit. And it's not just Marquis, because that destruction of Detroit School of Arts is not, you know, an isolated event, and it's not something that only affects Marquis. It affects all those students there, and it affects all the students and community members of Detroit. And it affects the students who come here from Detroit, the 6 students who come here from Detroit, and have to find their way. I remember being a freshman, you know, and like, and wondering like how to fit in and feeling that isolation and loneliness that I had no idea how to answer. So I filled it up with, you know, acquaintances I didn't like who were racist, but I felt so lonely that it was better than being like alone. And I remember filling it up with, you know, I was at the University of Michigan Dearborn, which I transferred from. I was in, you know, the newspaper there. I was in the art journal there. I was in the radio station there. I was trying to keep busy so that I didn't have to focus on the fact that I was so alone and so isolated. And then whenever I tried to express the way I felt, nobody understood because nobody wanted to understand. And you have to imagine, you know, UofM Dearborn, where they do actually have black students. And then to come here to Ann Arbor, I'm glad that I finally knew who I was by the time I got here, because I would have been destroyed otherwise.
A little bit, I just wanted to say, that like, what you're talking about, like this university consciously and constantly like picks money over people, money over their students. And that's what's happening also with like their refusal to get rid of like these frats that offer free housing, like for like it's costs a lot of money to join like a frat or a sorority, but like for the university, it's a lot less expensive than, pretending that they care about like keeping their students safe in like a dorm. And so I'm really glad that you spoke. And like the thing I've written is a lot more like purple prose and personal and kind of embarrassing now because it's not very well written and I wrote it in the last like 2 hours, but I'm sorry, you want me to hold it? I don't know. I got it. Sorry. And it's long, I'm sorry. I'm not going to cut it down. I feel like each year I'm faced with a distinctly new sadness and an equally distinct, powerful hope. At the tribunal that BAM held last winter semester, I talked about my depression and the way that it had been exacerbated by the reality of this campus. It was brisk that day, and we held the rally that marched from the Diag to the Michigan League. I remember sliding into that march coming from class, and the way the wind feels against your cheeks when you're yelling and marching, like it's trying to cool down the fire inside of you. We were in the room in the Michigan League deep into the night, and then I talked about my depression. I've had it for as long as I can remember, like an old acquaintance. I transferred from Dearborn to Ann Arbor in the winter 2015 semester. I had seen the campus and heard only good things. At UMD, we both revered and hated Ann Arbor. UofM Dearborn wanted to be Ann Arbor and hated that, and UofM Dearborn hated that it was looked down upon. I thought then that I was going into a community that would love me and care for me and allow me to care for myself. Coming in with these hopes and aspirations to grow and to be okay, then I hope you can imagine the reality as devastating to me. I'm not weak in any sense of the word. No person with mental illness is. I know how to fight, and I do, but the overt pressures of this university make it easy to want to just stop. And statistics are one thing, but seeing the university administration actively put so much effort into quieting a rape survivor for months is so terrifying that no words could ever encapsulate it. And knowing that you go to school with racist students is one thing, but having CSGs and professors you're supposed to trust silence you is another thing entirely. Seeing student orgs sell out the student body in order to appease administration and money is another thing entirely. So these are the things I talked about at last semester's tribunal. I talked about the night that I was walking home and had to hold on to a tree crying to keep myself from jumping off the bridge in front of the CCRB. This isolation is a murderer. But I didn't talk about that time I self-harmed and then wasn't allowed to give blood for U of M's blood battle because of it, or any of the other little breakdowns, ones that felt as constant as breathing. Because I feel a lot, and I feel for others' pain, and I feel for my own pain, and I felt the isolation that this university sows like wheat. But I talked about it here in a BAM tribunal with people who make it easier to keep my fight going. I described that double-edged sword that comes with fighting so openly. You're exposed to so much more pain, but you have so much more power than ever before. Power to ease that pain. Power to finally answer that constant roar for justice, for retribution, not only for yourself, but for others. And when you want to give up, more people are relying on you not to. But that means that you are in so many people's hearts, their thoughts, and their eyes. That night at the tribunal, we came together and found strength in each other. In another one's story and pain, we were able to find ourselves and our reasons for fighting. At the end, we left with the curious will that a plan of action, love in one's heart, and strength in our convictions creates. Then, at the end of the semester, we came together again to protest at the April Regents meeting. Even now, when I try to examine and express it, my thoughts become a jumble, tangled like we were in that room, in that scheme that Schlissel, Harper, and the administration and Regents had put into action. I had gone so cold. I was scared From the beginning, I was scared. I didn't know how the Regents and administration would react. It was already scary to speak in front of classes. I was scared that I wouldn't be able to do it. But I never doubted even once that it was once it was posited to us as an option and we decided to do it, and even before then, I never doubted that this was the right thing to do. Last semester, I was much shyer and more timid. I had been in a headspace of respectability and quiet, sly resistance rather than open protest. But even then, I knew a few truths. That protest within the parameters set for you by those who seek to destroy you is not protest at all. And that even if I was scared, I would do it because every protest, action, and rally is about more than just myself. It's fighting for students, present and prospective, those who are fighting and those who are not, those who stand with us and those who don't. Those are the people that we're fighting for every time we do something, anything. And then there were police. Jose said, "You should do it now," and Leroy stood up and started.
Open it up, bro, shut it down.
And I was up and we were moving forward and we were chanting, and then I'm reeling and Jose and Justin are face down being zip tied, and I'm on the floor and all I can see is David still chanting, still standing as cops try to topple him to the floor. Then they're on his back and he's down and he can't breathe and I'm crying and I'm telling them that they got to get off of him. He can't breathe. And a cop says so calmly, "He'll be fine. We'll get off of him when he complies." And I don't know what's going on. I realize now that I was in shock. The videos make it look a lot slower, a lot less scary. It's so easy to see just a mass of bodies rather than 6 adults, cops, piled on top of Markeith. He was 16. He has asthma. He was one of the people I was fighting for. It's easy to not see Jose get dragged across the carpet or David with blood all over his ripped shirt. It's easy to not notice on the first watch how the administration and regents all stay in their seats and watch, with front row views that only go for about 40,000 students' livelihoods and the livelihoods and futures of the students and people of Detroit as well. Here's the thing. We had a Regents meeting protest in November where the Regents, I suppose, had a test run. And at that meeting in November, BAM members and students protested in the room. We chanted and held signs. We moved forward. We stopped in front of the Regents and continued to chant until the Regents left the room. In April, we were going to do the same thing. We knew about the new tables blocking the Regents' room from the audience, and we worked out the path of least resistance beforehand. In a way, we also knew about the factor of police. We knew about increased insecurity. We knew about the possibility of arrests, but you can only plan so much, like John said. They arrested 6 people inside the Regents meeting. There's a moment of eerie quietness that you'll probably notice in the video before Chandrea picks up that chant again. That, I think, is the moment of understanding. This is the moment that is hard to plan for, This university administration believed that if they allowed the university police to brutalize us, to make examples of us, that the growing student movement on this campus of students who are tired of the vicious treatment of themselves as people would falter and maybe halt completely. They also thought that if they arrested BAM members who weren't students, if they arrested the people they saw as the leaders of BAM, then we as student members would, like sheep, only wander lost without the masterminds. But when we continued to chant outside of the Regents meeting, that was our leadership. The leadership of the students you go to school with. We took a vote as a group to go to the Regents meeting and make our demands known yet again, because before the absolute and complete silencing of the student body, before the brutalizing of a student on campus, comes the cold, bureaucratic treatment of student rape survivors, comes the disdain for and disinterest in growing racism on campus, if not outright protection and encouragement of that racism. First comes the second-class treatment of immigrant and undocumented students, things that have all become synonymous with the University of Michigan. This administration and its money was hoping that omnipresent subjugation and the violent silencing of a radical student group would be enough to keep students in line for a little longer, and I am so grateful that they were wrong. In the hallway outside of the Regents meeting, they arrested Chris, the only student they arrested. We held on to him, not willing to let him go, but they took him. We chanted. Liz stood with us. She had a sign. They ripped her sign from her hands and grabbed her for arrest. We held on to her. We had all linked arms to keep them from separating us. An officer put his forearm to my throat and pressed. I felt lightheaded and heard Lindsay yelling, "Stop it, you're choking them." But I didn't let go of Liz. The officer only stopped when he was implored to by his coworkers. They took Liz. We kept chanting. We kept close. I'd never yelled so much in my life. I felt like my throat would bleed. Then two girls I'd never seen before came forward with their phones. At first I thought they were there for the spectacle of it, like news media I want to do. But they walked right up to the cops and recorded all of their names. When one officer would switch out, these two students would start the whole process over. They constantly brought us all water throughout the entire protest. If not for their solidarity, I wouldn't have been able to continue chanting till the Regents meeting was over. There is no way to not feel discouraged when you are attacked for standing up for justice. But when I say that I am fighting for more than myself, I mean it. And those students coming forward to help us when the administration turned its back to us then, as we have seen again in this semester, made me realize that I had been hurt. And I am tired of being hurt. And I will never accept being hurt as something I simply deserve. And so when I talked earlier about that this semester and about the way it has made me feel, I do find it easier to keep fighting, knowing that I have made that decision to not give up and to not let go. As we continue to mobilize and organize this semester, I see things that I shamefully admit that I didn't expect to see so soon. Those two students who stood in solidarity with us have turned into many. Central student government, notorious for being conservative and controlled by the administration, is being split in two because of the rift between that old failing conservative body and the body of members who want to fight and be the voice for the students they represent, some of whom have picketed and participated with us at the court hearings for the Regents meeting protesters who were arrested. When Kate, Chelsea, Chris, Carrie, Tyler, and I exposed this administration and Schlissel for their violent, racist policies and for pursuing their charges against the Regents meeting protesters, not only does the audience applaud, but more students and faculty and staff demanded that Schlissel and the administration answer for their racist treatment of them and their issues, and students, faculty, and staff actively seeked us out afterward to talk to us. Campus community has come up to the table to ask for our petition, demanding that the Regents and administration drop the charges against the Regents protesters, asking for it so they could sign it. I have been witnessing a student body, a campus, finding it easier to act, shaking the dust off of their will and urge to fight, finally answering their anger and their pain with a "yes, I will resolve you," and making the decision to demand that their rights as human beings and students be met. Meanwhile, we see the administration's fear. It's palpable and sweet. The summit exclusion that they tried to do to us before Tyler, told us, "I'm in, come here," was a failure, and it was a great one. And his and Schlissel's horrible remarks with the Chicago Reporter after Chelsea spoke shows how much that bothered him, that we were there speaking the plain truth to hundreds of people. And even them arresting Jose, it's been said over and over tonight, it shows how cowardly and just how scared and on the run they are. That struggle for freedom of the students and fighting staff of Ann Arbor and Detroit especially must grow and hold strong. They demand our work and our strength as a movement. They are who we answer to because they are us. I have only hope because of our movement, more than 40 years in the making, is so young and new and fresh and strong. I have hope because I am tired of being hurt, and now I know that I am not alone in knowing that we will never accept being hurt as something we simply deserve. We must keep going on this powerful, positive trajectory. To incite true, sustaining change, it is absolutely necessary to build on this student-led, youth-led movement and progress with the protection and expansion of the rights of students in Ann Arbor, in Detroit, and in this nation, of immigrants, undocumented or otherwise, LGBT students, minority students. Your pain is our pain. Your anger is our anger. Your will is our will. And our never-ending struggle is the one that fights for us all. Thank you.
Okay, so on that really strong note, I want to call for a vote on our central demands and on everyone here building the campaign to get Keysha and Chelsea elected to CSG, because the elections got delayed to Monday and Tuesday, so we actually have some time, more time to campaign. And you know, they have been like real leaders on CSG without being on CSG, and like real leaders on this campus. And so anyway, so I want to read the demands. So unless you want to read them.
Okay. Just yeah. Let's. You wanna go first? Oh, I see. Double underrepresented minority enrollment. On-site admissions in Detroit schools now.
No cuts to the scholarship or for undocumented students. Expand and publicize in high schools and extend to graduate undocumented students.
Make UofM a sanctuary campus for undocumented immigrant students.
Stop the cover-up of rape and sexual assault. Expose and expel rapists. Defend the right of survivors to speak out and publicly name rapists.
Drop the charges against UofM Regents protesters. No targeting of immigrant and youth leaders.
Okay, so we want to vote for building the movement for those demands, and doing everything we can the next few days to win Keysha and Chelsea's seats on CSG. So, all in favor?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Any opposed?
I just wanted to say thank you so much for everyone who came here, who continues to stand and fight for justice and for equality on this campus and off. And I really implore you all to speak. I know I said a lot already, but I did actually write a real statement, so it's longer. Even if you haven't brought a statement, even if you thought that you weren't going to speak, if like anything that you hear resonates with you, if you hear yourself in the stories that are told tonight, please share your own. And that's all I have to say. Thank you.